The room was hot, crowded, and full of loud voices. Alien buyers from different worlds sat in curved rows, their eyes glowing, some with hunger, some with boredom. The auction stage was in the center, with thick lights shining down from above. The announcer, a thick-skinned lizard-like alien, shouted numbers and names in broken Galactic common. A tall guard pulled a chained alien boy onto the stage. Bids were shouted, one after another. And just as quickly, the boy was sold. Then came others, workers, fighters, even rare pets, each sold and dragged away. In the back corner of the room sat a young human man, quiet and still. His name was Jace, a mechanic by trade, a nobody to most. He had no fancy clothes, no alien tattoos, no big weapons, just a small ID tag on his collar and a pouch with a few credits. The people around him didn't notice him, or if they did, they laughed. What's a human doing here? Someone muttered, probably lost or broke. Another one chuckled. But Jace's eyes were locked on the stage, waiting. And then it happened. The announcer suddenly lowered his voice, his tone growing serious. Next item is rare, he said. Very rare. Everyone leaned forward, curious, from behind the black curtain. 2 guards brought out a figure, tall, slender, and covered in a torn silver robe, a collar around her neck, and glowing cuffs on her wrists. Her head was bowed, silver, hair falling over her face. But even with her posture low, the crowd could feel something different. Some whispered, some gasped, some just stared. It was a female alien, young but not a child. Her skin was smooth like stone, her eyes hidden behind her long hair. The announcer laughed nervously. This one's complicated, he said. No memory, no name, found alone near a crashed ship. He looked around. We tried everything. She doesn't speak, doesn't eat much, and doesn't obey. She's pretty, I guess. Someone in the crowd muttered, drawing laughter. She's broken. Another shouted. No use. The announcer raised his hands. Starting bid, 100 credits. No one moved. Silence filled the air, thick and uncomfortable. Some buyers looked away. Some pretended to check their devices. The announcer frowned, sweat on his brow. Fine, he said. 50 credits. Still no hands raised. She's cursed, someone whispered. I heard she burned a handler just by touching him. The announcer forced a grin. 30 credits, come on. That's when a single voice rang out from the back, calm and clear. I'll take her. Heads turned, eyes searched, and all at once, they locked onto the human in the back. Jay stood up, his eyes calm but strong. The announcer blinked. You? He said, then laughed. You can't be serious. Jace held up his credit pouch. 30 credits, he repeated. Right now. The room erupted in noiseless. Curses, gasps. You don't know what you're buying, someone growled. She's dangerous, a cloaked alien hissed. She's not normal. The announcer scratched his head, confused. Human, why her? Jace looked at the girl on stage, then back at the announcer. Because no one else would. He said simply. The announcer shrugged. Fine deal, he said, banging the small hammer. She's yours, human. The guards pushed the girl forward. And Jace walked to meet her, up close. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even breathe heavily. Her face was pale, her lips tight, and her hands chained together like a doll. Jace reached out slowly, unlocking her cuffs and removing her collar. Gasps filled the air again. No one touches a slave before full transfer. A voice shouted, but Jace didn't stop. The alien girl lifted her head slightly, revealing glowing blue eyes. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Everyone froze as her eyes locked with Jace's, calm and unreadable. Then something even stranger happened. A metal device on a nearby table, a scanner used for slave registration, suddenly lit up and made a high-pitched sound. The screen glowed with old alien text, and the device buzzed louder. What ... What is that? The announcer stammered. That's not supposed to happen, a guard said, stepping back. The alien girl didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the device. and the room, once full of mocking voices, now stood in stun. Silence. Jace looked around and said softly, "She's not broken." He gently guided the girl down the stairs, his hand on her back, and as the crowd parted to let them through, no one laughed anymore. They only watched, their eyes wide, their voices quiet, because they all felt it now. This wasn't just a slave. This was something more, something ancient, something powerful, and the human had just claimed it. Rain fell on the rooftop of the old building where Jace now lived. The city lights below flickered through the cracked window. But he didn't care about the view tonight. He sat at the edge of a dusty couch, staring at the alien girl sitting across from him. She hadn't moved since they returned from the auction, not even to drink the water he placed near her. She just sat still, her silver hair falling over her face, her eyes half hidden, watching him like a quiet animal. Jace didn't speak either, not at first. He didn't know what to say, didn't even know why he bought her. Maybe it was pity, or curiosity, or something else he couldn't explain. But deep inside, he felt something strange the moment her eyes met his, like she was more than she looked. He finally broke the silence with a soft voice. "You're free now, you don't have to follow me." No answer. She blinked once, slow and silent. He tried again. "Do you understand me?" Still no reply. Jace sighed and leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. He wasn't good with people, definitely not with aliens who refused to speak. She didn't eat the food he cooked, didn't even look at it. He wondered if she even needed food at all, or if she was just being careful. That night, he left the room door open and lay on the old bed in the next room. He didn't sleep much. He kept hearing soft footsteps, breathing that wasn't his, small shifts in the air. And once, in the middle of the night, when he opened his eyes, he saw her standing in the doorway, watching him. She wasn't trying to scare him, he knew that. But her stare was too calm, too sharp, like she was studying him for weakness or something deeper. In the morning, the food plate was empty, and the water cup was half drunk. She had eaten, but only when he wasn't looking. Jace smiled a little and nodded to himself. "You're not just quiet. You're careful." Days passed like that. She followed him everywhere, but never too close, always a few steps behind. She didn't touch anything, didn't speak, didn't smile, but she watched everything. When Jace fixed an old cum device, she tilted her head and stared at the wires. When he cleaned engine parts, she moved slightly closer, her eyes glowing faintly, as if scanning every motion. It was strange, and yet it felt normal too, until one evening, everything changed. Jace was working on a damaged scanner he bought from the scrapyard. It was a rare model old tech from before the big Galactic wars. No one knew how to turn it on anymore. He opened the back panel, looked at the dead core, and sighed, "It's useless." But then she walked forward, slow and silent. For the first time she reached out with her hand. Jace stepped back, unsure what she was doing. Her fingers hovered over the scanner's power cell, then touched it gently. The entire machine lit up in bright green light, buzzing to life. The screen glowed with words in a language Jace couldn't read. He stepped closer, shocked. How did you do that?" She didn't answer, just pulled her hand back, blinking calmly. The scanner now ran perfectly, as if it had never been broken. Jace stared at her with wide eyes. That was ancient tech. No one even remembers how it works. Still, she said nothing. He slowly sat down, feeling a cold shiver run through his spine. "You're not just someone's slave, are you?" He whispered, more to himself than to her. That night, he looked at her differently, not like someone who needed help, but like someone hiding a deep secret, and maybe hiding from someone later. When Jace tried to sleep again, he heard a soft voice near the door. It was quiet, almost like a breath, but it made his heart stop. She had spoken one word, just one. Jace, his name. He sat up quickly, but when he looked around, she was gone, just the silence of the night. But the meaning of that one word was louder than any scream. She knew his name, and now he was sure she wasn't broken. She was just waiting, and now the wait was over. A cold wind blew through the scrapyard outpost as the sun set behind the red hills. Jace stood outside, staring up at the sky, feeling something watching them. Sira sat inside the shelter, her eyes closed, her hands shaking gently on her lap. She had spoken only a few words since that night, but the change in her was clear. She walked with more purpose, her movements more confident. Like her old self was waking up, but there was fear too deep and heavy in her chest. Jace could see it in her eyes, even when she tried to hide it. He knew she was remembering things she wasn't ready to share. 3 days had passed since they warning signal, and nothing had come yet, but that didn't mean no one was coming. Jace had seen how the communicator blinked when her hand touched it, how the alien screen showed her face with markings around it, symbols he couldn't read. He'd spent hours searching through old data files, stolen logs, and broken satellites. One word kept appearing, Val-Thera. He showed it to Sira, but she froze the moment she saw it. "I know that word," she said slowly, "but I wish I didn't." That night, Sira told him a story without using names. A girl born from high blood, trained not to rule, but to obey. A family that saw her as a tool, not a daughter. She had powers no one else had. Her touch could wake machines. Her voice could unlock vaults, and that made her dangerous, even to her own kind. They called her a threat to tradition, so they erased her name, her memory, and sold her off like garbage. Jace listened, saying nothing, but his hands curled into fists. He wanted to find the ones who hurt her, but he didn't even know where to start. The next morning, an old trader stopped by the outpost. His eyes darting nervously, he whispered, "You've been marked." Jace raised a brow. "By who?" The trader leaned close. "Royal hunters. Val-Thera blood. They're coming to collect what's theirs." He looked toward the door where Sira stood in silence, her silver hair glowing in the sunlight. "She's not a slave," Jace said calmly. "She's free." The trader gave a bitter laugh. "That doesn't matter to them," he said. "They don't see her as a person, only a relic." Before Jace could ask more, the trader left quickly. Vanishing into the dunes, Sira stepped beside him, quiet as ever. "You're in danger now," she whispered. "Because of me." Jace looked at her and shook his head. "No, because of them." That night, Jace set up hidden scanners around the outpost, hoping to get an early warning. At midnight, the alarms flashed, silent but strong. 3 ships, sleek and black, landed without sound just beyond the ridge. Figures moved in the dark, long coats. Glowing visors, weapons that hummed softly. Jace grabbed his rifle and turned to Sira. "We run?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "They'll follow." Her eyes lit up faintly, a glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jace had seen that glow before on ancient tech, on that broken console. Sira stepped out into the night, bare feet pressing into the sand. The hunters spotted her instantly, weapons raised, voices shouting orders. But she didn't stop. Jace moved to protect her, but she raised her hand gently, stopping him. The wind picked up, dust swirling around her like a storm, and then something strange happened. The ground beneath her feet lit up with old alien runes, pulsing blue. A symbol appeared in the sky above her, ancient and bright like a ghost. The hunters froze, eyes wide behind their visors. One of them dropped to his knees, whispering, "Val-Thera." "It's true," another shouted. "She must be taken alive, no damage." Sira opened her mouth, her voice soft but full of power. "No," she said, and the air around her cracked with energy. One of the ships behind the hunters suddenly shut down, its lights dying, its systems fried. The hunters panicked, firing blindly, but their weapons jammed. Jace grabbed Sira's arm, pulling her back toward the outpost. "You said they'd follow," he said. "Then we don't stay here." Sira nodded, her eyes dimming. "We find those who remember the old ways," she said. "The ones who know what I am." "And what are you?" Jace asked as they climbed into his old speeder. She looked at him, and this time, she didn't blink. "A secret no one was supposed to survive," she said. As the speeder roared away from the burning ridge, Jace realized one thing. Sira wasn't just lost royalty. She was the reason entire planets had gone quiet in fear. And now she was remembering everything. The storm hit the mining planet just before nightfall. Wind roared like beasts in the sky. Dust clouds thick enough to hide ships. Voices, even gunfire. Jace didn't care about the storm, not tonight, not after what Sira had told him. They had taken shelter in an abandoned mining station. Broken walls and old machines creaking all around. Sira stood near a cracked mirror, looking at her reflection like she was trying to remember her own face. She touched her neck, where the slave collar used to be, and whispered something too quiet for Jace to hear. He didn't interrupt, just sat by the fire, repairing a small energy rifle and thinking about her words. She had spoken about betrayal, about her own guards turning against her. A council of elders who feared her power, feared what she might become. So they erased her, broke her mind, and sold her to the black markets far from her home world. They had hoped she'd die in chains, forgotten, silent forever, but now she was awake and remembering everything. Jace looked up when he heard her steps approaching. Sira sat beside him, close, not afraid anymore. "I used to command starfleets," she said, "and now I can barely walk without shaking." "You're still stronger than all of them," Jace replied, not as a compliment, but as truth. She gave a soft smile, almost sad. "You don't understand what it means to be Valthera." "Then tell me," he said, meeting her eyes. "Show me." She paused, then placed her hand on the rifle he had been fixing. Blue light moved from her fingers into the metal, and the rifle hummed like it had been reborn. "That's not magic," she whispered. "It's memory. I'm linked to technology, older than most stars, but they used that power as a reason to fear me." Jace nodded slowly, then stood and paced the room. "So what now? You hide forever?" Sira shook her head, her voice sharper now. "No, I take back my name." Just then, the warning beacon near the window blinked red. Movement in the storm. A scout drone buzzed through the wind, then crashed against the wall and exploded. Jace and Sira ran to the window, peering into the storm. Shapes moved in the dust fast. "Armored, hunting. They found us again," Jace muttered, grabbing his gear. Sira looked calmer than before, her hands already glowing faintly. "They won't stop," she said, "until I kneel again or disappear forever." A loud crash came from the roof, then a flash of light as enemies dropped into the building. 3, 4, maybe 5 cloaked warriors with glowing red eyes and high-tech blades. Jace fired first, hitting one in the shoulder, but they moved like shadows, too quick, too trained. Sira stepped forward and raised both hands. Blue rings of light formed around her, spinning faster. One of the attackers lunged at her, but the moment he touched the energy, his body froze and dropped like stone. The others hesitated, unsure. That's when Sira spoke, her voice echoing like thunder. "You serve traitors, and you walk unbroken oaths," one warrior shouted back. "You're no queen, just a lost memory." Sira walked toward them slowly, light around her growing brighter. "I remember the day you swore your loyalty," she said, "and the day you stabbed me in the back." The warriors faltered, stepping back. Jay stood beside her now, heart pounding. Not out of fear but awe. He was watching the queen rise from ashes, and nothing could stop her now. Sira stopped just a few feet from them, her face calm but deadly. "Run," she said, "or kneel." They ran, shadows swallowed by the storm. Silence returned to the broken station. Jace lowered his rifle and looked at her. "They'll send more, I know," she replied, "but now I send a message too." She walked to the old transmitter on the wall, placed her hand on the console. The machine buzzed, shook, then activated for the first time in years. She whispered in the ancient tongue, and a signal shot out into space. Jace didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. A queen was calling her people, and the stars were about to answer. He stood beside her as the storm howled outside. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war. The forest moon of Grelin was quiet, but the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the deep breath before a scream. Jace crouched behind a tree with his rifle ready, eyes scanning the fog-covered trail ahead. Sira stood behind him, not hiding, her silver hair glowing faintly in the moonlight. She didn't need to hide anymore, not after what happened on the mining planet. The hunters had returned with stronger weapons, but Sira had changed too, not just in power, but in will. She was done running. They had landed here hoping to find an old ally of Sira's, a warrior who once guarded her family before the betrayal, but instead of a friendly face, they found burnt villages and empty buildings. Something darker had come before them. Jace moved forward quietly, pushing open a wooden door barely hanging on its hinges. Inside, the house was cold, abandoned, with ashes where a fire should have been. On the wall, someone had painted a message. In alien blood, it said, "The Queen lives, so we burn." Sira read it, then turned away, face unreadable. Jace watched her carefully. Who did this? "Extremists," she answered. "They believe my blood brings war, not peace." "They're not wrong," he said carefully. "You've already started something." "I didn't start it," she said softly. "I just refused to die in silence." They rested inside the broken house, Jace repairing a drone, Sira keeping watch, but just before dawn, the drone beeped twice. Something was coming. At first, Jace thought it was more hunters, but what appeared out of the fog wasn't soldiers. It was a girl, alien, small, limping, her face bruised, her hands shaking. She collapsed in front of them, gasping, "Help! They're coming! They took my mother!" Sira rushed to her side without hesitation, placing her glowing hand over the girl's chest. Blue light flowed into her, and the girl's breathing slowed. Jace looked beyond the fog and saw shadows approaching, tall, armored, brutal. Not just hunters this time, but death squads. Jace gritted his teeth. "We can't fight all of them." "We don't need to," Sira said. "We just need to survive long enough to send another message." She carried the girl inside and whispered to her, "You're safe now." But even as she said it, she knew the safety was thin as paper. The attackers moved through the forest fast, burning everything behind them. Their leader was a creature of steel and hate, a former general who had once sworn loyalty to Sira's father. Now he led the purge to erase her memory forever. Jace set traps, planted charges, and prepared for what would likely be their last stand. Sira stood at the center of the house, hands raised, whispering in the ancient tongue. Power surged through her like a storm trapped in a bottle. Jace watched as the lights in the walls flickered. Old machines powering up, even though they had no fuel. This place. "It's waking up," he said, amazed. "It remembers me," she replied, her eyes glowing bright again. "It was built to protect my line." Moments later, the first squad reached the clearing, and the fight began. Blaster fire lit up the sky. Trees exploded into fire, and metal feet slammed against the dirt. Jace fired from behind cover, taking down 2 enemies fast, but more kept coming. Wave after wave inside. Sira stood firm, her body glowing brighter with every second. Then, as the walls began to fall, she stepped outside, her voice rising into the wind. She spoke one word, ancient and lost. The ground shook, and from beneath their feet, something massive awakened. An ancient machine, half building, half beast, rose from the earth, its body humming with energy. It had been buried for centuries, waiting for one command. Sira pointed at the invaders and said calmly, "Protect us." The machine obeyed without question, moving with thunderous steps and crushing power. The death squad panicked, retreating as the machine tore through their lines like paper. Jace could hardly believe his eyes. The forgotten technology, the hidden strength, the loyalty of something that wasn't even alive, and all of it connected to Sira. After the battle, smoke rose into the sky, and the ground was covered in silence again. The little alien girl they saved sat beside Jace, her eyes full of wonder. "She's not a slave," the girl said quietly. "She's something more." Jace nodded. She's a queen. Sira stepped forward, kneeling in front of the child, wiping her tears with soft fingers. I couldn't save my people back then, she said. But I will save yours. Jace looked at her, realizing she wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. She was fighting to rebuild, to protect, to rise. And now the galaxy was watching, because what once was a silent girl in chains had become the voice of fire. And her voice was only getting louder. The stars above shimmered like cold diamonds. But the silence in the great chamber was louder than space itself. Jace stood at the edge of the Galactic Council Hall. Surrounded by leaders, generals, and envoys from dozens of alien worlds, they all stared at him like he was a mistake that had walked in uninvited. Beside him stood Sira, calm and tall, her presence so powerful that even those who hated her felt nervous in her glow. She wore no crown, no armor, no jewels, yet every eye was drawn to her. It was her blood they feared. Her name they tried to erase, but now they had no choice but to face her. A member of the council slammed his fist on the curved table, his voice shaking with anger. You have no right to stand here. Girl, he growled. You are property, not royalty. Jace stepped forward without fear. She's not property, and she's not alone. The hall erupted in shouting, some voices calling for arrest, some for exile, some whispering warnings. Sira raised one hand, and the noise died instantly, as if the room itself obeyed her. I didn't come to beg, she said softly. I came to tell you the war you started is over. The council stared in disbelief. One alien noble hissed. You have no army. Sira looked at Jace, and he nodded. Pulling a small sphere from his belt and tossing it into the air, a hologram opened, showing rebel fleets gathering, old warships from forgotten systems now bearing her mark, outcasts, survivors, broken colonies rising behind her like a storm of fire. The same nobles who laughed at her now looked uneasy. You created enemies by trying to erase me, she said. And now your enemies have a face to follow. They tried to argue, but deep inside they knew. This wasn't the scared girl from the auction. This was a symbol that would not go away. Back at their ship, Jace sat quietly, watching her as she stood near the window, staring at the stars. He had seen her change, not just in power, but in spirit. She was no longer searching for who she was. She had decided what she would become. But the cost was growing, and they both knew it. The next day, the council sent a private message, short and brutal: surrender Sira, or Earth would be blockaded. Jace read the message twice, then looked at her. They're threatening my home. I'll go, she whispered, if you ask me to. But Jace shook his head slowly. I didn't fight this far just to give you up now. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened, a silent thank you written in her gaze. Together, they activated the old beacon buried in their ship, one of the last Valtheran distress signals left in the galaxy. Only a true heir could use it, and only those who still believed would answer. It sent out a pulse, not just through comms, but through machines, forgotten tech, and even ruins. In distant systems, machines awoke, codes unlocked, doors opened, and ancient warriors received the call they had waited generations to hear. On barren moons, long-hidden followers saw the sky turn blue and whispered, "She lives." A week later, in the dark of space, 50 ships arrived, each bearing a forgotten banner with a silver star. Some were damaged, some barely flew, but they came without hesitation. At the front was a ship the size of a city, silent for 500 years. Its captain was an old alien with scars down his face and steel arms. He bowed before Sira without speaking. "You still follow me?" She asked quietly. "I never stopped," he replied, voice like gravel. "I was just waiting for you to return." Jace stood at the edge, amazed as the past bent to her like iron before flame. She turned to and said, "You gave me back my name, Jace, and now I give you mine." She handed him a small ring-like device, an ancient Valtheran symbol of alliance. Not marriage, but trust. He took it, not sure what it meant, but feeling the weight of it in his chest. The final message came through the Council's network soon after. "Prepare for judgment." it said. Your decision has broken ancient law, Jace. Read it, then looked out at the ships waiting beyond the stars. He smiled quietly. Let them come. Because the human who once bought a silent girl from a slave market now stood beside a queen, and he would not let her fall again. Not now, not ever. The galactic trial was unlike anything seen in living memory, held on the floating station called the Spine. It orbited no world and served no planet. It answered only to history. Ships from every known system gathered around it like metal insects. Drawn to a flame inside the silver halls of the station, hundreds of leaders, nobles, judges, and spies filled the grand courtroom, and at the center, on the smooth circular platform under a blinding white light, stood two people. One was a human, plain in dress but calm in fire. The other was a girl once sold in chains, now standing as the last living heir of a forgotten empire. Jace said nothing at first, just held Syrah's hand. She stood tall, her silver hair braided down her back, her eyes calm, glowing with power and memory. The High Speaker began the trial with a cold voice. You are accused of violating the Council's code by reviving a fallen royal bloodline. You are accused of breaking galactic peace. You are accused of rallying fleets, awakening forbidden machines, and igniting rebellion. Syrah stepped forward without fear. I did not ignite rebellion, she said softly. I reminded the galaxy of what it chose to forget. Whispers moved through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. An alien warlord stood and shouted, You dare speak of forgotten things as if they still matter. Syrah turned to him, her voice sharper now. If they didn't matter, why are you afraid? The warlord sat back down, silent. Another council member stood, this one from a peaceful system, her tone softer. And this human? She asked. Why did he involve himself in this ancient mess? Jace finally spoke, his voice steady. Because she was alone, he said. And no one should have to rise alone. Gasps echoed. But not because of his words. Syrah reached to her side and pulled something from her belt, a glowing crystal. Smooth and pulsing like a heartbeat, it was the crown memory. An artifact lost for 600 years, capable of showing the truth of the past. She placed it on the platform, and a light shot upward, forming images in the air, scenes of her childhood. Her betrayal, her exile, her sale in the black markets, but also scenes of the ones who ordered it. The same council members now judging her. The room froze in stunned silence. Truth hung in the air like a sword. One by one, some council members stood and removed their badges, ashamed. Some begged forgiveness. Some just walked out without a word. The High Speaker tried to call for silence. But the room was already splitting, half still loyal to the old codes, half now believing the truth standing before them. Then without warning, the lights dimmed, and the doors opened wide. From the main hall, an army of silver-armored warriors entered, not to fight, but to kneel. They were Valtheran descendants, hidden across the stars for generations, waiting for the true queen to return. They knelt before Syrah, and then they knelt before Jace, because though she carried the blood, he carried the choice. The one who had seen her not as a weapon, not as a relic, but as a person. The High Speaker stepped down from his place, eyes wide, voice shaking. What do you want, Queen of Ash and Light? He asked. Revenge. Syrah looked at him for a long time, then slowly shook her head. No, she said. I want my people to stop hiding. I want the machines to sing again. I want the stars to remember our names. Then she turned to Jace, her eyes soft again, full of something deeper than power. And I want him by my side. The judgment was clear, not spoken, but felt. The council crumbled that day, not in flame, but in shame. New rulers rose, loyal not to fear, but to truth. And at the center of it all stood a human who once gave up his last credits to buy a silent girl. He had no crown, no training, no bloodline. But he had something better: heart. Together, they walked out of the courtroom, not as master and slave, but as partners in a galaxy that now dared to change. And as the stars shone down on them through the glass ceiling, the room behind them fell silent, because in that moment, the galaxy finally understood. The decision of one human had rewritten everything.